All right, so that's what leads me to my final segment today. And for those of you guys watching on video on the internet, this is a final segment. Well, the second to final segment. There's a little brief comedy segment at the end of the day. But the final segment of episode 2765, which is a topic roundtable discussion for November 2nd, 2020 at the survivalpodcast.com. I've been doing that podcast for 12 years. You might like it if you're watching the video, so check it out. Everybody that's out there just listening to the podcast from here on out, we'll just be talking to y'all the same way. So I just finished up a segment on the shift to remote work. I just talked about cryptocurrency. I talked about the plans for the election and the plan to lose by the left that turned into the plan to maybe win because of the COVID curveball. And I want to kind of talk about where this is all going. And I want to revisit what I've been saying heavily this year. But for people that are new to me and think I'm like saying run away or something, you're not understanding me. I've been saying to get out of the cities since 2008. And I've not been talking about running off in the middle of Bob Marshall wilderness and becoming a hobo or something like that. I've been talking about getting out of these flashpoint cities and getting out of places where you're not able to do the things that you want to do. With the amount of violence this year, I've ramped up that call because not only do you have physical risk to your person and safety in these cities now, but that's the minor thing. Your businesses and your properties are being devalued and will continue to be devalued by all of this. And COVID's killing the dying. It's accelerated all of these megatrends that I've been talking about, again, on air, over 2,700 episodes of the podcast since 2008. I've been saying the same thing, and it's only become more true over time. Today we talked about how a major corporation has everybody working remotely, and they're already planning on going back until June next year, and they're not going back. They have internal communication saying it's not going to happen. They're shutting down 75% of their commercial real estate, and all of their highly paid employees are moving from big cities to small towns, leaving behind the element of the parasite in these cities. It's all getting worse. And what that means is, as lopsided as voting is in Los Angeles or San Francisco, etc., all this migration is going to make it more so. All of you people that are still worried, those liberals are going to come to your town and screw it up. No, they're not. Texas is not going to vote Democrat this time, but it will. It probably will in 2024. And me voting won't change that. Me yelling and screaming won't change that. I'm looking at the trend. And this is the big thing when I say get out and get into defensible position. I think some of you don't understand what I mean by defensible. I'm not talking about being able to take people out with your AR-15 or your AK-47 or if you're smart, an AR-10, right? I'm not talking about that. A little bit, but not really. You can defend yourself with a firearm anywhere. Now, the results are not guaranteed, both in the battlefield and in the legal field. But when I say defensible, I'm really talking more about being able to live the way you want to live. And this is what you guys have to understand this. And until you do, you will never focus on the actual problem, and you will never realize basically how screwed we are with the trend in this country moving towards socialism and what the actual solution is going to involve. It's going to be your individual adaptation. It's going to be our forming of our own networks and resources, etc., to exist as much as we can apart from this system while it destroys itself, because we know it will. Because everywhere socialism goes, it destroys itself eventually. And we're not going to be immune to this. And the problem is not that liberals from California move to Idaho and turn it into liberal land. This is just another example of two things the right has a big problem with that it doesn't want to fix. One, fear of immigrants, and two, thinking short term. The left is much better than the right at thinking long term, which is why they have won in the long game 100% of the time in modern history. None of you have seen the right win long term. None of you. Trump won. Not the right winning long term. What about Reagan? Not the right winning long term. You mean the guy that brought us the biggest tax increase the United States has ever had? The left wins long term because the left thinks long term. The right occasionally wins short term because the right thinks short term. And that leads to this misunderstanding about where liberals come from. I've said this before, but cities are liberal factories. Cities make liberals. And that would be one thing, but they're not making liberals anymore. Now they're making true leftists. They're making Marxists. They're making socialists. That's something that changed over time. Cities used to make liberals. Now they make full-on leftists. And that's not the same thing. We won't get into that today. How do I know this? Because I watch it happening in my own family. That's how I know this. I have a brother and sister-in-law, two of the most conservative people you will ever meet, and they are the people that they do their duty and they vote because they believe in it. They're that type of person. They voted straight-ticket Republican, both of them, since the day they were old enough to vote, and there was an election to vote in. They don't miss any elections. Special elections, primaries, general elections, midterm elections, runoff elections. It's their civic duty. They show up. Conservative, how conservative are they? These people do not miss a Sunday at church. They raise their children in the church. Are they native Texans? Both of them are. Both of them were born and raised in Texas. Sister-in-law, her family moved here before she was born. Her parents were immigrants from over in Europe that came here after the Second World War, and her grandparents were, or her parents, right, were two of the most patriotic Americans you would ever meet. Her father put that American flag up in his front yard every day till he couldn't do it anymore. And that's one side of the family. The other side of the family, brother-in-law's side, his parents are from here. His grandparents moved to Texas, had them here, so they're multi-generation as well. So that's the lineage coming down to my niece and nephew, the brother-in-law, sister-in-law's children. They're smart kids. My nephew is in his last year of law school. Smart kid, recruited aggressively by some of the top law schools in the country and going to school for almost no money out of his own pocket due to scholarships, purely academic. My niece is at A&M in pre-veterinary medicine. Smart kids. Dummies go to college all the time. They don't do that. Okay. Both of them are flaming liberals now. Both of them. Flaming liberals. Mourning the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who they just think was wonderful. Why? Because cities create leftists. They're leftist factories. It gets worse. The main way they create leftists is in schools inside the cities. Now, this is happening in Podunkville as well. It's just worse in the cities. There's more peer pressure and they get away with more. It all works out this way. It gets worse, though. My sister-in-law, she's a school teacher. She's creating liberals. Right now, can't see it because I'm a conservative. Are you following the lesson plan that they give you? Well, I have to. Then you're creating liberals. Brother-in-law, he's a cop. He's a good cop. Really. Enforcing liberal policies. Why? Got to. It's my job. If these people have their children growing up becoming liberals, and again, they're not even liberals. They're leftists. They're Marxists. They're socialists. And you think that the problem is liberals are coming from California, you do not understand the problem because you're thinking short term. Why do you think the left went after the education system? Because they think long term. They're not thinking about this next election or even the one after it. They're thinking about a 100-year cycle. How do we move from where we are to where we want to be over 100 years? And that's why they're winning. You're mad at me now. You're screaming. You're probably typing angry comments into YouTube or something like that. But I'm not wrong. Look at all the long-term fights that the right had. They've lost every one of them. We got tax cuts. That's a short-term win. Look at from a policy standpoint. I'm not saying they're better policies. I'm not saying I'm for them. I'm saying they're winning. And they're winning because you convert the children when they're young. You indoctrinate them when they're young. How do you do that? You destroy the family unit. That makes it easier to do. You put them into debt, specifically student loan debt, and then you promise to fix the problems you caused them. And you blame the problems on their parents. But as we've seen, even if the parents are like the perfect textbook family, loving parents that raise their children the right way, in the church for God's sakes, who still have great relationships with their children, the indoctrination system is too strong. And this leads me to the other part of this segment, defensible position. You cannot be in a major city today and expect that it will get any better anytime soon, but you can bet that it will get worse. With whatever you're opposed to, if you're opposed to leftism, whether you're like me and you're a voluntarist and you're not part of the dichotomy, but you don't want the problems that the left brings, or whether you are a right-wing, ultra-uber conservative that believes in good conservative values and you think you want that. The thing is, people like me, we don't give a shit what you want. You can have whatever you want if you leave us alone. That's all we ask to be, is left alone. We'll solve our own problems. We don't need your help. That's why we like you more than we like the people on the left. In general, people on the right are content to leave you alone. The left is not content to leave you alone. The only way that you can strategically position yourself into a defensible position right now, number one, get out of any major city. That does not mean you can't live anywhere near it, but you better not live in anything that actually is it, which includes the direct suburbs. If you can open one window on one side of your house and spit really hard and hit your neighbor's house and go to the other side and do that again, and there's a major city near you that you can drive to really, really quickly, and you're kind of underneath their government, even if you have some autonomy, get out. Whatever freedom you have that's left, it will be destroyed by Karens and Kyles and homeowners associations and local governance and Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 2030, and all of this shit. And your nation is going to swing in a megatrend to the left, because it has been for 100 years, and there's no reason to believe that it'll change now. And you've been focused on worried about Bill and Tom moving together as a gay couple from San Francisco as your problem, while they've indoctrinated your children while they were living under your freaking roof. And it's too late to fix it, because you didn't ever want to see it while it was happening, and you still don't believe me when I'm telling you it now. The one thing you can do is go to places that have the least amount of reach from the hydra that is these major cities. And when I say defensible position, I mean able to live a life the way that you want to live it without interference from those as much as is reasonably possible. And you need to understand that these people are going to focus on the 80% of people who will never do that. It's too hard to get your arms around all these little pockets of resistance out there. Doesn't matter. You're just going to take over all these metro areas and then force as many people into them as possible. And you know what you're going to get? A nation as big as the United States with little Switzerlands throughout it. Little places where you can be not completely left alone, but they'll never leave you alone, Jack. I understand that. And there is a point where if you push me far enough, I will put a bullet in your forehead. Please don't think that I'm like some kind of peacenik that doesn't have that point in my life that I will reach. Okay? And don't think that I think I'll be able to do anything I want at all, period, ad infinitum. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is not having the complete and total tentacles wrapped around you. And places like I live, and places like I'm describing, they will become the Switzerlands. Kind of neutral territories. And you know what's going to happen to the real estate in places like that? You ain't going to be able to afford it. Because what does it mean when you get to that point and people are like, man, I want to get out of here. And it's not as simple as it is right now. And those places become more and more desirable. If you go to the right place, you're not going to just keep building new houses there. That's the whole point. You don't want a place where that's going to happen. You don't want a place built on growth. You want a place built on the value of people being left alone, that don't give two shits what their neighbor does. Those places are going to be going out of the reach financially of the average person very, very soon. Even if you have a good remote gig. Why? Because when something is rare, it goes up in price. And this is why you've always been told that real estate is a good investment. They ain't making no more dirt. Now, we know about soil building and all that in the world of permaculture, but I'm not talking about it that way. I'm talking about from the way that thing was meant when it's been said. First time I heard that, I probably was 12 years old. And I'm an old fart now. Look at how much gray is in this beard. They ain't making any more dirt. That means there ain't no more of it. Sure, we can build houses, build buildings, etc. But when it comes to a block of dirt, an area, yeah, they even tried what? They're trying to make Dubai, try to build that whole, like town on islands that they made, and it's all falling apart and shit. Yeah, that sci-fi shit ain't working out real well. It's going to become harder and harder to get yourself out of these places in the future and to move to what I'm calling a defensible position. But please understand that the cities and their schools are liberal factories. They're leftist factories. It's not people coming from somewhere else that you have to be afraid of. Now, I'm sure the person that moves from San Francisco to Austin is not helpful. That person's going to move anyway. It's called a republic. You're so proud of it until it doesn't work to your advantage. That's just people move from one city to another. When you got these people that are tired of this shit and they're moving out of these sinking ships and they're moving out in the country to be left alone, they're not your problem. And it doesn't matter if like half of them are and half of them aren't, whatever. This doesn't matter. It is what it is. It's human nature. We move around. Your problem is the manufacturing center. So you're worried about, hey, you know what? They just imported a truckload of leftists last month. They brought a whole truckload of leftists in, backed it up, and unloaded them with a forklift and put them off into our ecosystem. And you're not looking at the freaking, 500 truckloads of them that they just fabricated and manufactured in a factory in your backyard. So y'all go on. Y'all tell me, stay where you are, stay where you are. None of you people saying that ever live in any of these places. You want other people to stay on their sinking ships. Get out, get out, get out. And get your kids out. That's my last piece on this segment. Get your children out of the government school system because you can do everything right. You can teach them 100% right. You can teach them that government is not their friend, and they won't believe you. By the time they come out of the other end of that system, it will do exactly what it was designed to do. It will indoctrinate them, and it will teach your children that you are the problem. It's what they're doing right now. You have within you the ability to withdraw them from that system and educate them at home or some other alternative right now. And you can give me all the excuses you want about, I can't do it because you don't understand. If your child was in a burning building, I'm pretty sure you'd pull a wet towel over your head, charge in there, and pull them out. And you wouldn't give a shit what it cost you. You would do it. All right. You figure it out from there. Again, you guys can check out this segment on thesurvivalpodcast.com and the rest of the episode 2765, by following the link in these video notes. And we will catch up with you with another video later.